Popcorn Therapy, holistic health and wellness through the lens of pop culture. I'm Julie Peters. I'm a counseling therapist, a tarot reader, a writer, and a witch. I love to think deeply about pop culture and find out what our stories can tell us about who we are as individuals and as a culture, spiritually, psychologically, physically, and in all kinds of other ways. If you like that too, you are in the right place. Welcome to Popcorn Therapy. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome back to Popcorn Therapy with Julie Peters, and I've got my regular guest here with me today, Emilee Nimetz. And we're going to be talking about Love is Blind Season 8. I have always loved watching this show because it can be such an interesting example of the way real human beings do interact with each other and their childhood traumas and their attachment styles and things like that. So it's a really interesting thing, I think, for a counselor to watch. So I'm going to bring my my counselor hat today for sure. And in some cases, well, often as I'm watching the show, I think of each character, well, cast member, whatever you want to call it. If they came into my office and talked about these things, like how would we address the issues that they're facing? So I'm kind of bringing that perspective a little bit. Emilee is going to be bringing their perspective a little bit different too. So Emilee, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself however you'd like to?
Hi, everyone. I'm Emilee Nimetz. I use they, them pronouns. I like pop culture. I love watching these shows from sort of an anthropological perspective as a queer person. Just a little lens into what are the heteros up to? Like I feel like it gives me a good idea of what what the heteros might be up to, for better or for worse. So yeah, it's like I just find it really fun to watch and talk about these things and analyze them. And also be extremely shocked and horrified, as was the case with this season. So yeah, happy to be here.
There were a couple of interesting queer moments in the show as well that we'll talk about, I'm sure. So I have a friend who does a podcast called Material Girls, it's their sort of academic feminist criticisms on pop cultures. And I listened to an episode where they were talking about the idea of text and paratexts. And so Love is Blind would be the text. It's the major thing that we're looking at. And then the paratext is anything around that text. So in this case, there were a lot of TikToks, Instagrams, stories, like, people responding, comments. I'm not sure if it's a lawsuit, but there's some stuff going on with Alex and what's actually going on with him. So there are all these texts that are happening around the show itself. And I feel like, Emilee, you are so much more tuned in to what the youths are doing.
I am perpetually online, yes.
You're connected to like what people are talking about on TikTok. You share those things with me, and then I get to be like, oh, okay, this thing is also happening. So that's another piece as well that we're going to be talking about, because I feel like this season had such a particular it was almost necessary that you knew some of the paratexts in order to understand, what they were talking about at the reunion and so on. Because there was actually a scene in the show where they talked about a TikTok. And you may or may not have seen that TikTok. Emilee and I saw it last night, maybe earlier than that too, as it came up. But we'll also talk about that. So obviously spoilers, we've watched the whole thing, including the reunion. So if you want to go back and be surprised about who says yes at the altar, what happens at the reunion, please go watch and then come back and listen afterwards, because we're going to go through all of it. Yeah. Okay, so I think I want to start with the quadrangle at the beginning. Mason, Meg, Alex, and Madison. This season has been notorious for similar names, similar faces. Lots of white people. The heteros and the whites and what they're up to in Minnesota with their cute little accents. And apparently this city has a very small town vibe, and they often talk about how they bump into each other at bars, and it's always the same people. And when the casting list happened, like, everyone in the city knew who those people were, because everyone's just so connected, I guess, in that area. And so we have these four that are connecting in the pods. And how does it go? So Meg and Madison are both interested in Mason. It's like a rhyme. I'm having trouble getting it out of my mouth. And then Mason, so Mason's interested in both of those women. Alex, I think, is only interested in Madison, but she's sort of trying to choose between those two men. And it's a whole drama. So, Emilee, tell me your thoughts about what happened with those four.
Well, of course, as we were watching this show and texting each other during it, I am here for Madison. She is my queen. I am obsessed with her. She can do no wrong. She's absolutely perfect. Um, but yeah, I feel it like watching it unfold was like it was very messy. I feel like something that I notice when I watch these shows is like it often feels like people are trying to position themselves, like they're trying to position themselves within the storytelling of the show as like the person who will come out in a good light, probably when they post it. So it felt often like people were trying to have control over the situation. From what I could tell, Madison was genuinely pursuing these two men. She had very different dynamics between these two men, which was somehow a problem with people, according to the reunion. I thought that was very normal. Anybody who's been exposed to polyamory would just be like, yeah, that's normal. But I guess like probably heterosexual white folks from this this particular state would probably not maybe be exposed to that. I don't know. It just seemed like I was just like, yeah, like this guy provides this one thing for her, this guy provides this other thing for her. Um it was interesting to watch them at the beginning. Like now I'm thinking back to how they were at the beginning, and I did think that like Mason and Madison were a better match. Like she seemed to have a bit more banter with him. Um, but it seemed like Alex maybe had a bit more sensitivity and maybe she was looking for that. And then Meg, I mean, I think this has been said a lot online, so this is probably not news to people, but I feel like Meg definitely has like pick me energy, which for folks in the know, a pick me is somebody who is just really interested in the validation of men and will kind of go above and beyond to get that validation. And I think that Meg was kind of showed herself in that light, which was why it was a little surprising why she kind of ended it with Mason in the pods, although they did get back together or whatever. But like, yeah, I thought that it was hard to watch that, you know, her being like, I love conspiracies. I listen to alien conspiracies. I listen to Joe Rogan. I was like, oh God, like not this, like, ew. And yeah, I feel like that was her energy. And then seeing her energy at the reunion, like to kind of fast forward, it was like, oh God, like it was definitely that energy. She was coming there to defend both of these men who didn't treat her great. Like, I don't know why she was like so against Madison. But I thought that Madison was very genuine to me. I don't think that she claimed to be like a perfect person. Like she was very much like acknowledging like, oh, I sometimes have this kind of attachment. I get anxious, I get avoidant or whatever. Um, and then at the reunion, I thought that she came with receipts and she was like, no. And I thought I was like really impressed with how she pushed back to specifically the men who tried to like come for her. And I thought that she did such a great job at that. And yeah, I just love her. I think she's so cool. And, you know, girl, call me.
Yeah. She's hot too.
She's so hot.
Definitely.
She's sensitive. She's an
Yeah,
artist. I'm like, oh my gosh, get over here.
totally. Yeah, no, I really liked Madison too. And it was interesting to notice the way people were talking about her online, because, you know, there were a lot of people that the moment she said she was avoidant, people were like, oh, avoidants are the worst people in the world and all this stuff. And also, she became somehow the villain of the season, which sort of surprised me because I just thought, why are we blaming this
Yeah.
woman when, you know, these men, I mean, I don't know how the casting works exactly, but so often when we watch Love is Blind, we're like, who are these men? Like, they're just awful
They're
people.
awful.
And the women are like trying their best and, you know, just being human beings. And many of the men are in season 7 particularly, which we did a podcast about, some of them were quite terrifying. I didn't find them as scary this season, but I found them more lacking is maybe a good word
Yeah,
for
like
it.
I feel like these
Um,
men were just really like there was nothing going on in their brains at all. And this is like a big thing is like we hear this big conversation around like the male loneliness epidemic, alleged male loneliness epidemic. It's like, okay, go find friends then. Like nobody's stopping you from finding friends and having genuine connections. Like calm down. But
Try a little
yeah,
harder.
like what you can do is you can talk to your friends and that will probably fix that. No one's stopping you. But I feel like when I think about this, a lot of these men on the show, and not just the Mason and the Alex, but like the Ben, a lot of these men actually, I felt like almost maybe all of them just have zero personality. Like there's no personality there. And I don't know if that's like again, an element of trying to portray yourself in a certain light to not show parts of your personality that you know might be like not so great. Or if it's like you actually are that dull of a human being that like you haven't thought about Black Lives Matter or you haven't been had any critical thought at all about, anything. Like it feels like these men sort of have just nothing going on. Like my favorite movie is Her. I was like red flag, run away, run away, run away, run away, run away, run away.
I thought it was really interesting that the dynamic we saw at the reunion, which was Meg sitting between Alex and Mason, defending them, defending herself, calling Madison manipulative, and none of them taking any accountability for what they did. I sort of feel for Meg. I mean, I feel my sense. Okay, so I think all of them are insecure. All of them have insecure attachment, that shows up in different ways. For Meg and Madison, it was a little confusing to me why they would be attracted to these men. Madison was really, really into Alex, and I just couldn't understand why, like what he was bringing to the
Yeah.
table. And, my suspicion is that what he was bringing to the table was that he was never quite available,
Mm.
which is something that an avoidant attachment style feels safe with. An avoidant attachment style will much prefer an unavailable person because there's never the threat of real intimacy and really depending on someone. When the two of them were having that conversation, I appreciated that Alex brought up attachment because it's such a useful tool to understand how you are in relationships, how you are under stress, what kind of things you might need when certain kind of stressors come up. But I didn't like his approach to it. It was like it was great that he brought it up, but then he was kind of using it
Yeah.
wrong,
And using it like
in my
against
opinion.
her. Like it was like you're a bad
Absolutely, like
person.
almost
Yeah.
weaponizing it. Totally. And so, in that conversation, I don't like how people talk about attachment styles like astrological signs,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm unavoidant and I'm unanxious. And it actually doesn't work like that. You can have different attachment styles with different
Yeah.
people. It can change in different kinds of circumstances. It gets triggered under stress. And what I think a lot of people don't understand about attachment is that it's a strategy to manage relational
Mm.
stress. And it works. So it's not a bad thing. Like if you have insecure attachment, it's usually because in childhood, your relational needs weren't met adequately. So usually an avoidant person are avoidant because they learned their needs were never going to get met. And so they had to figure out how to do it on their own. That's
Mhm.
adaptive, right? It becomes a problem later in relationships when you've learned not to trust that anyone will ever meet your needs,
Mhm.
right? So then you tend to prefer unavailable people because unconsciously you'd much rather be in a situation where it's not going to work out and you're never going to have to get to that place of vulnerably needing
Mhm.
someone. For anxious attachment, it's essentially the same thing. It's just that you had connection and it was taken away or it was inconsistent. So, you had a loving parent who died early or who left or abandoned you, or sometimes that person would be present and meet your needs and sometimes they would be unavailable, which can happen with like an alcoholic parent, for example. So the thing about attachment and avoidant is that they're actually just two sides of the same
Yeah.
coin. So an anxious person will actually also tend to prefer someone who's a bit unavailable. The narrative is slightly different, but it rather than coming from this place of like, okay, I know that this person is unavailable, and so unconsciously I already know my needs aren't going to get met. This is going to fulfill my prophecy. They'll never get close enough for me to need them. I feel safe here. That's the avoidant perspective. The anxious perspective is more like, okay, this unavailable person, if I can get them to love me, that will prove that I actually am lovable, which I fundamentally don't believe in both cases. That's what the insecurity is. It's believing I'm not lovable. And then what ends up happening is, of course, that person's not going to love you. So it's going to fulfill your prophecy, right, of that. And you're going to prove it yourself right all over again. The behaviors are a little bit different, but it's underneath it all. It's actually the same thing. And so, you know, when he said, what's your attachment style? And she had a great response. She said, I'm avoidant. Here's why. You know, here's what happened to me in my childhood. Here are the things I've healed from. Like, it was giving therapy. Like, I'm pretty sure she's done some therapy in her life. Many people have insecure attachment, and it's about how you deal with it. It's not about just, you know, getting the luck of the draw where you just happen to have secure attachment. And I don't know how many people will say like, oh, I'm securely attached. Like, I never have any issues in my relationships, right? Like, we all have those moments where we get stressed, we overreact or underreact or whatever it is. And so I think her response to that was great. And he was just like, well, I'm anxious, so that doesn't match. And it's just like, what? Like, that's not how you have that conversation. And I feel like every time he just didn't quite give Madison what she wanted, he didn't quite let her in, he didn't quite let her be good enough. Like, it often felt like, you know, there would be something she'd say and he'd be like, I'm not sure about that, or I don't like that about you. And so that drew her closer to him, being like, ooh, this is the person I have to. It's almost like her anxious attachment would have been activated, because she's like, this is the one I have to draw to me. There was a real kind of push-pull with the two of them. And it seemed like that was what was bonding them, not their personalities or shared interests or anything like that.
Yeah, I felt like it was funny because they both self-identified as like Alex as anxious and Madison as avoidant, but in that relationship they actually seem to have opposite like styles. Like, what we witnessed was actually completely opposite, and it felt like, you know, felt like Alex had this information and constantly used it against her, and that like caused her to feel like insecure, and then was just like wanting him to like validate her or whatever. And it felt like he sort of had gained this power, which according to like the allegations against him, it seems like that is something that he allegedly is maybe interested in. So it's like, yeah, there's just this sense of like he was constantly using it against her. And that was like the dynamic between them. It had nothing to do with like anything. So I agree. It was interesting when she chose him, because I was like, oh, like, are you just like kind of spiked in this new way that maybe as somebody who sort of like maybe overly identifies as avoidant, like now it's like a new thing and you're like, oh, maybe this is love ? And it's like, no, it's not, run away. So I'm glad that didn't work out. But like, yeah, it was really hard to watch, and it felt really like Alex was quite like gross and weird about that whole situation.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in that moment when she said, I feel like I have a deeper connection with Alex, it reminded me of, you know, a big lesson I've learned in my relationships is that I would easily confuse passion with anxiety, right? When someone makes me feel anxious, when someone makes me feel like they're not quite there for me, when someone makes me feel like I have to work a little bit harder to get their attention, there's an energy in that, right? There's a draw to that. There's an urge to draw the person closer, to do everything that you can to make them love you, essentially. And you think that's love or that's passion, but actually it's your anxiety getting activated. And so for me, and for many people, I would assume, and I think this is what happened to Madison, you know, you'll have avoidant attachment when someone's available and loving, because then you're like, too close, like that. Whoa, I don't know what to do with that, right? But then when someone's just at a bit of a distance, that's when you feel like you can open up, because you know you're not actually vulnerable, right? Because they're never going to really be that person. We don't know that consciously. It's like an unconscious thing that's happening in our nervous systems. But I think that was the flip-flopping that was happening with Madison. And absolutely, I agree that it seemed like they were actually doing the opposite of what they said their style was. And my sense was that Meg, too, I think it was a similar kind of anxiety / passion thing, because again, why is she so into Mason? Like, what are they connecting on? They both love her, they're into aliens. I'm not sure if Mason's so into aliens and like conspiracy theories and stuff like that. Like I feel like Mason's just your yes
Yeah.
man, you know? He's just kind of like, sure, like I guess I could be interested in that thing that you're interested
Yeah.
in. And because Mason had another connection, I think that was what caused Meg to feel like, the way that you were explaining that pick me-ism, it's sort of like, okay, I need to be the one that's chosen because I need to feel chosen, because I need to be able to prove that I'm
Mhm.
lovable, because that's the main issue I'm working on. It has nothing to do with this
Yeah.
guy, right? It's actually because that's how it makes me feel that he's choosing someone else. It's possible that if he wasn't also dating Madison and he was all in on Meg, she would have been like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Right? Because the activation would have been different.
Totally.
I have a whole theory about attraction is actually stress. In a way. Attraction, well, not really stress, but it's like a lot of the time we're attracted to someone because they poke a wound in us in some way, and that wound is really trying to heal. And so our nervous systems think, ooh, here's an opportunity for me to replay that old wound and fix it and make it better. And we don't even realize we're doing this. And then we end up in these sort of attachment loops that I think we saw a lot of in this season
Oh yeah.
in particular.
Me dating every single man I've ever dated. Like it's like, wait, I don't actually, I'm not attracted to you actually whatsoever, but you definitely bring up something in me that I'm like, well, will this fix it? It didn't. Spoiler alert.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, it doesn't, right?
No.
And so, again, like the way to heal is not to just magically have secure attachment.
Yeah.
It's to understand, why you have those reactions, like where that comes from.
Mhm.
And in some cases, it's about tolerating closeness, right?
Yes.
Tolerating loving behaviors. And did we see any of that? Was anyone loving? I think Daniel was loving of Taylor,
Yeah, I was gonna
actually. I
say
think
both of
those
them
two.
seemed very like present and with each other and vulnerable and like, as much as I kind of didn't love that guy for being like, I'm short, no, 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 like that was his whole thing, and I'm like, that's an insecure man. Um, I did feel like
And
they,
Paratex
hmm?
online after the cliffhanger of the first season, which was, Taylor thinking that he had followed her and then unfollowed her, and it was this whole thing that she kind of spiraled about. When they had that conversation, I liked how Daniel just like looked her in the eye and just listened. And he was just like, honestly, I can't 100% remember. But if I did remember that, like, here's what I would have done. And like, whatever you need is okay. We don't have to go to Honduras. Like, I feel like that it was kind of a nice moment of him being like, I actually care about how you feel.
Yeah,
And this isn't just about clout for me. But online, so many people after that cliffhanger were saying she never would have had that problem if he'd been tall enough. Like online, everyone was talking about how actually he's not a good choice because his shortness makes him not valuable in the realm of dating,
mm,
right? And so, the fact that he had some insecurity about being short, like our society is very, very hard on short men. And I feel like maybe it was sort of him naming it and being like, short king
yeah,
season, like it's okay that I'm short. And he didn't really bring it up again,
no,
right? And there were moments when Taylor was taller than him in her heels. She never said anything. He never said anything. Like it just actually wasn't a big deal at all. But I feel like everyone online was expecting her to be like, actually, I don't like this and I'm going to make up a whole narrative about it because I don't want to be with someone short. Like that's what the expectation was,
yeah.
right?
It was interesting to see that kind of fizzle into nothing, and it was actually like very comedic, like the beats of like the awkwardness and the producer bringing the phone and like that whole, and like part of me was just like, why are they showing this?
When they both said Bueller, it was kind of cute.
Yeah, like it was like it was too real. I was like, this is such a real thing where it's not like the conflict feels like you're watching a movie. It's like nothing. Like it was I was like, this is so
Yeah.
funny.
She's just going to scroll her phone for several
They're
minutes
gonna
to
show
figure out
all
if
of
you
it, her
unfollowed
being
her or
like,
not.
wow, I have a lot of
And then she's like, guess not. It's like, oh, okay. It's over.
so funny. But yeah, I
Big
do
drama
feel
for
like
nothing.
when I forget there was this moment, it might have been during the weddings when she was like looking at him, and I felt like she was like really, really listening to him, and I felt like he was really listening to her. And I think that that's part of what we see in this show is that, and I think part of what happens in the dating world too is that like to have a real connection, like a love connection, you do have to show up not in your ego, not as the person that you want to be perceived as, but as somebody who genuinely wants connection, who wants love, who wants a relationship. And that is really hard to do, like to just genuinely show up that way. Our culture makes it really, really difficult to do that. And so seeing them just really look at each other and like be there for each other, I was like, yeah, that seems real. Like I buy that. Like that does seem real to me. They seem just like these very happy, boring white folks who like Christmas. And I'm like,
Just
yeah,
love Christmas.
great.
Let him love Christmas.
Great. Go live your boring little lives. Like, cool. Yeah, yeah. So it was like I felt like that's actually like such a truth is like they are kind of dorky and they are dorky in this same way. And I feel like that dorkiness, that cringiness, like it actually is part of like opening yourself up to being loved by somebody, like that's kind of part of it is being like, yeah, like I'm kind of a loser in XYZ. So like, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Because I feel like there's a lot of ego, a lot of guards being up for good reason in a lot of cases. Um, but then sometimes the dynamic is that somebody's guard is up and then somebody is trying to be like, wait, what? Like when we had the physical wall, you were way more open. And now that the physical wall's gone, you've put this emotional one up. And so now I can't even like see who you are or anything. But yeah.
Yeah, I've often joked that Love is Blind is an avoidance dream. Because when there is a literal wall, it gives you that sense of safety that allows you to be vulnerable. And I think a lot of people do experience this, like from what we've seen from past seasons, not even just on the show, but finding out that 75% of the participants get engaged because they all fall in love that way. Like it's a really powerful way to fall in love. And I suspect part of the reason for that might be the physical wall does create a sense of safety that allows people to go to that place of vulnerability and actually letting themselves be close in a way that where there's no physical
Yeah.
threat, right? And I imagine that's a little bit different depending on who's there. I know a lot of women and feminine identified people have physical fear of men that's a little bit
Hmm.
unconscious, right? That's ambient, that's in the culture, all of these things. And so when you know that someone's not immediately trying to sleep with you or going to threaten you in some way, it might actually be easier to take your guard down and be like, oh, maybe I can make a joke. Maybe I can talk about things like I don't feel the physical
Yeah.
threat in this environment, right? And for men, I don't know, it might be, for men, male identified people raised as men, there's so much pressure to be like cool and stoic and look good as well, be tall, be sort of attractive in a specific type of way. And so, maybe for them as well, it just takes a little bit of that pressure off, even though they are on camera. So, I mean, obviously it's not a perfect
Yeah.
experiment. But maybe it does allow them a little bit more of that space to open up a bit. And so they have that vulnerability in the pods. And how often do we see the second they meet each other, like you said, that emotional wall goes up, the guard comes up, like,
I feel like with, cisgender heterosexual men who are often not given permission through the culture to be themselves, frankly, to embrace all parts of themselves. um this wall creates this like and the wall, but also the fact that you're cut off from your phone, you're cut off from your direct influences, like you're in this kind of vacuum. And I think we see it a lot of the time. I can't think of a specific example from the pods, but I remember it from past seasons as well, where these men just like emotionally dump. Like it's just like they're like, this is maybe the first time I am saying things out loud, like, and then my mom died, and then da, 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 and then this happened, and then blah blah blah, and it's like they have never expressed a feeling because they've never expressed a feeling. And it's like this just like waterfall comes out again. Like I don't know if this happened this season, but like it creates a false sense of like intimacy because it's like, wow, they shared so much with me. And I think for the person who's doing that like emotional dumping, it's like, wow, they know everything about me. Like that's so connected. But often that is also a wall because it's like, now you know everything. So now like I can't be hurt because I've already said the things that, you'll look into. Like it's just like, now you know. So if you say anything bad about me, like you already know what is going to hurt my feelings or whatever. Like it's, it's another defense mechanism, I think, in a lot of cases. But I think it's interesting having like just like being like in a deprivation tank of like of this romantic pursuit. You just kind of like emotionally vomit to like to literally a wall, and then it's like, oh yeah, you have to like physically witness the person, be witnessed by that person. Like that creates this like intangible intimacy that can never be recreated in a deprivation kind of environment.
Yeah, there's an essay that you can read online pretty easily, I think, called Why Men Are So Obsessed with Sex. And the reason that this writer, Bearman, Steve Bearman, I think is his name, gives is that sex is the one place our culture allows men to be vulnerable, to feel things, to express themselves, to feel close, all of that stuff, to like make sound. And I feel like that made me think of that the way that you're describing the pods is like maybe this is this other sort of rarefied space where because a man isn't actually actively trying to have sex in that moment, the pressure's totally off. Like that's not what they're there
Yeah.
for. This is one of the few spaces where they're actually being where their value, their opinions, their thoughts, their feelings are valued. And of course, our season 7 men really squandered that, didn't they? Because a lot of them, like they had stories to tell and stuff like that, but that their opinions, political thoughts, like feelings, we'll get back
Yeah.
to that. But anyway, yeah, I think that is a really interesting perspective on the pods, that maybe there's something really special about that for the men and women in different ways, that allows them to connect with each other, which is again, something maybe quite particular to hetero relationships, right? Like in a queer space, there is a lot more space to be a bit more diverse in like who you are and how you express yourself and what you have to say and what you care about and all those things. Not that that's a perfect space either, but yeah, I think there is something interesting about like Love is Blind being such a heterosexual experiment.
Yeah, because it's like all the boys are in this room. Look at those boys being boys and they're having a beer. And it's like, do y'all not like see the stereotype? Like it's so wild to me. Like it is again, like I know I say it kind of jokingly, but it truly does feel like this kind of anthropological like study of maleness because it's or like heterosexuality because it's like, yeah, people really are like that. And especially this season, which like I really feel like needs to be is probably said, but like obviously like people are talking about the way that these men all look the exact same with their sort of dark blonde hair and their blue eyes and their white skin, save for one person. Um, and I felt like the women similarly had a very
That was shown, right? Because I think there was more diversity in the original cast, and Brittany was engaged apparently to a black
Mhm.
man, and we didn't see any of that.
Yeah, I heard through the TikTok of it all that apparently they didn't want to show that person on screen maybe because he was problematic, which I feel like if somebody is so problematic they don't want to show them, like that's got to be pretty bad because we've seen some pretty problematic people on that show that it's like, oh, if that person is
Yeah.
like that's going to be pretty bad. I mean, it's all alleged,
Like,
of
what kind
course.
of problematic are we talking about
Yeah,
here?
yeah, like
Because,
what? Like now I'm
yeah,
like, we need to know. Show us the tapes.
yeah,
Like, what do you mean?
totally, totally, yeah.
Because
Show us.
you're not
Speaking of,
showing us some great guys. Like most of them are real duds and
yeah,
harmful at that. So it's like, wait, worse than what we're already seeing? Like what?
yeah, and like how many of us are still haunted by the season 7 men that were just like actually terrifying and abuse
Yeah.
adjacent. Like that was pretty problematic. What we saw with Ramses and what's his name with the cold dead eyes. It's
Yes,
just like
cold
really
dead eyes.
scary.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like we had a lot of vacant eyes
A lot
this
of like
season, just like
if
nothing
last
there.
season was like dead cold, dead scary, this season was vacant, just like call into one ear, right out the other, like
Yeah.
hello, 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 like nothing in there.
So speaking of problematic, do you want to talk about the Alex allegations a little bit? Because I feel like that was all paratext. There was none of that on the show, including on the
Yeah,
reunion. Nobody asked him a question about it. Do you want to share what you learned just from
for
online?
sure. Yeah. So this is all alleged. That's not confirmation of validity of allegations, just to put us in that space. But there were a few TikToks that I saw where people were speaking of allegations that came out about Alex as being like a sexual predator of young underage women, and that he was, I guess, a music teacher and there are texts, and this one person that I follow on TikTok who does a lot of breakdown of reality TV, she, had people DM her text and screenshots. And so it's not only one person, it's like a number of people who are coming out with these allegations against him, um, which is quite horrifying. Like, you'd think that they would, I mean, I don't know how the background checking works, but it's quite horrifying that somebody like that could get into the show and have basically like no heat put on him for that, and like for him to get through when apparently this other guy, like in that conversation around like the guy with Brittany was so bad that they couldn't show him. It's like, but you allowed this guy to come on. Like, I don't know the timeline of when these allegations came out, of course, like who knows, but obviously it was a thing in this community that people seems like they knew about it. So yeah, that's pretty fucked up, and pretty terrifying to learn that somebody like that is just out there. And I think that what I felt, obviously it's like confirmation bias, like I knew that information, but just like watching him at the reunion made me feel so uneasy.
And it's interesting to notice that a lot of before these allegations came out, at least, or I guess for folks that don't know it, a lot of people really thought Alex was like the best guy on the show. Like, seemed really emotionally mature and all this stuff. To me, he rubbed me the wrong way right from the beginning. There was something about him that felt really, something about the way he talked to Madison, which again, maybe is what I've identified earlier, of just never quite letting her be good enough, never quite letting her, settle in what she was, like always keeping her a little bit on her toes. There was something about that was a bit uncomfortable. And I remember right at the beginning, this is maybe a bit of a mean thing to say, but when he was like, I used to be really unattractive. And it's like, oh, it used to be. Okay. Like he's just, I mean, he's an okay looking guy, but I was just like, oh, like that's interesting. There was something about the way
he's like, and now I'm so
I guess,
hot.
That made it seem like he was just like, now I'm this super hot guy. And you're just like, oh.
You are a stick of butter at best. What was interesting about him that came out on TikTok was like, him being like, oh, I was a fat guy in high school with an afro, like, woe is me. But then like you see these pictures of him released from, I think, his high school yearbook, and he looks kind of the exact same. Like, he doesn't look different. He doesn't look like particularly overweight or anything. Like, apparently he was like a musician in high school. And so it's like, wait, did you just like lie about your entire, like, how, like, what are you talking about? It seemed like, he was really just excited to like put her down and like control her and all that stuff that made me feel like, he's subconsciously like trying to get ahead of being rejected by rejecting her so that he can like win that and have closure on that, which there's going to be no closure. He's going to probably repeat that pattern a lot, if he's not like in fucking jail.
Yeah, just the idea that, like if he perceived himself as unattractive in high school, whether he was or not or whatever, he might have been bullied or whatever it was, rejected by girls who looked like Madison or what he assumed she looked like. And then having this opportunity to be the rejecter as sort of a revenge sort of fantasy thing that he was doing, which I feel like fits with, the sexual predator thing, the power and control thing. Again, there is a lot of pressure on men around what they look like. And, I know we don't necessarily see this all the time, but like if a man is overweight or short or whatever it is, like these things that are very, coded as you're not man enough if you have these things, right? They can be really mistreated. And it's sort of, it goes into incel land, right? It's like, it goes into this sort of world of all the Chads get the Stacys or whatever it is. And like, we're just the poor guys who can't get anything. And in incel culture, there's a lot of like seeing yourself as really ugly, even when you're not. Like there's almost a status thing within incel culture about being really ugly and unattractive. But then it becomes an excuse to sometimes kill women, right? Like it becomes an excuse to abuse and mistreat women. And so it's like this weird flip of sort of using this ugliness narrative against women. So I feel like there was something about that where, again, how does he perceive himself? there's a sort of thing about like you feel bad for someone who has insecurity, but insecurity can be incredibly dangerous, right? Insecurity can be what creates a situation like an Alex and a Madison. If they had gotten together, you know, sometimes that can be early warning signs of abuse, right? When it's like, well, if I'm the guy that's always been rejected or not cool or whatever it is, I'm going to get this woman and then I'm going to mistreat her, and that can escalate to physical violence,
Absolutely.
right? As well as emotional abuse and all those other things. But you know, when you have someone who's coming from that place of insecurity, it's not just about soothing his feelings, right? Like it's actually, he might use you to make himself feel better in these much more insidious ways. And I feel like that's kind of the vibe, especially with the allegations that I get from Alex at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like Meg as sort of an incel adjacent, like I'm on the side of these alt-right Joe Roganites.
Yeah.
And I'm going to like stand with Alex and blame Madison, you know, for all these things. It's very sort of girl against girl, you know, that old patriarchal trick of getting women to compete against each other rather than support each other as a way to keep women and feminine people oppressed.
Which is
right?
why I like going back to Madison, like in that moment in the reunion when like Meg kept trying to position herself as competing against Madison. And I felt it was so amazing and compelling for Madison to just not fall for that at all. Like she never went, well, you da 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 da. Like it was always just like, I can't believe that these absolute loser men are like making this happen. Like she continued to like turn the onus back on the men who rightfully needed that back on them. And what I thought was also really interesting and really great to see was like when the pressure was placed on these men, they really flopped. Like they did not showcase any sort of like ability to respond in a way that's compassionate or to like uphold this idea of themselves. Like something that Mason said of like, I'm sorry that I didn't see your like, are you sorry to Madison? I'm sorry I didn't see your red flags and tell you about them. Like I was like, oh my God. Like, oh sure, but you're a good guy. But he's a good guy, everybody. Like, what are you doing? Like you said that, bro. Yeah. You said that with your whole chest.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, when they were having that conversation in the pods where Madison felt hurt and kind of confused by Mason when he said, I'm committed to you, and she had that iconic facial reaction, which is just the teeth emoji. She's just like, ugh. She did not like that. But she felt confused by that. She felt hurt by that. You know, whatever it was, like it didn't work for her. And when she was talking to Alex about it, you know, I felt like she was pretty clearly saying, like, I actually just want you to validate my feelings. And he was like, I'm standing up for my bro, you know, it's not his fault and all this stuff. And it's like, it's not that you have to throw him under the bus. It's just she's telling you what she needs. Like, pretty clearly, she's just saying, you know, all he had to say was something like, oh, that sounds like that really hurt your feelings. You know, like he didn't have to say anything about Mason in that moment, but he just sort of had this weird reaction to her where he was just like, well, I don't think you should feel that way because Mason's my friend. And it's like, well, that's okay. But like, aren't you here to sort of be on her side? Which again, we see Alex's true colors in that moment, right? Because he's not actually interested in how she feels. He's interested in, I think maybe power and control over her, I think is the thing he's interested in.
That's definitely what.
Not so much how he looks or whatever, the way some of these other cast members might have other ulterior motives, but it feels like Alex, it's a control thing.
Definitely.
Power.
Yeah, that was so weird. Like, and it reminded me of some of these men from like that or like when I was like younger, like the way that boys would kind of like try and like always position themselves as like against you. And it's like, no, like my boy. And it's like, that guy, what, he doesn't fucking know you. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean he's your boy and you're like standing up for him? It's like, and then my thought is like, is a little bit of him thinking that the audience is going to go, that's really great that he stood up for his friend. And it's like, nobody thought that. Like, you were just invalid. Like, you don't know this guy at all. He didn't even tell you that he was dating her. Like, you don't have a friendship. So like, what is happening here?
But that is what happened. Like online, a lot of people were like, Alex is a hero because he stood up for Mason and all of these things. Like, it's a lot of people fell for what he was selling.
Which is so funny because I'm like, I am so borderline, if not fully misandrous, that I was just like, Like I couldn't even accept that when it was happening. And I feel like my algorithm is like, as algorithms are, like confirmation bias, like it just shows me what,
Right.
I'm interested in. So I've seen a lot of people's response videos to the reunion, and it's a lot of people being like, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but I thought Madison was great. And I'm like, people are getting, like, I just was not looped into that conversation at all. But it doesn't surprise me that people were reacting that way, just because of like the insidiousness of like patriarchy and misogyny and all of those things within the culture, that it's completely unsurprising to me that people didn't see through these men for what they really were. And as it turns out, they allegedly might be.
Okay, so we are going to pause there. Emilee and I had a lot more to say about Love is Blind season 8, but I don't want to overwhelm you. So I'm splitting the conversation into 2 podcasts. And it's my intention to publish them at the same time, or maybe one the day after the other. I'm trying to get them done as quickly as possible so that you can listen to them both in short succession if you want to. So stay tuned. That should be coming up really soon. In the meantime, I'll just mention again, my friend Marcel and Hannah's podcast is called Material Girls. If you like thinking sort of a bit more deeply about pop culture, you'd probably love that podcast as well. So check that out wherever you get your podcasts. You can also now leave me a tip if you want to. You can go to juliepeters.ca/tip me. And just send me a couple dollars if you feel like it. If you want to support me and this podcast, which I record, edit, publish, all the things. I do that on my own. And of course, I have my wonderful guests come and join me. So if you feel like throwing a sister a couple dollars just to say thanks, buy me a coffee sort of thing, you can go to juliepeters.ca/tip me, and it'll pull up a PayPal button related to Ocean and Crow, which is my business name. So in addition to that, you certainly don't have to tip me. It really helps if you share the podcast, if you talk about it, if you like and subscribe, all those algorithmic things generally help get the podcast in front of people. I'm going to be going on a maternity leave soon, so I don't know how many podcasts I'm going to have coming out in the next couple of months, but honestly, I am so full of ideas and I do love doing this podcast, so you might see a couple over the next couple of months. So stay tuned for that. I'll do my best to just kind of keep everything rolling as it does for a little while. And go ahead and check out the part 2 of this conversation with Emilee Nimetz. It should be available. If not today, tomorrow, look for it. It'll be there. And enjoy.